Welcome to the Nifty Show. Joel and Riles with you here, both gaming nerds from the word go, and the transition from Web2 to Web3 isn't that difficult if you know what you're doing. And we're pleased to have us with us today, a gentleman who has made that leap. He is the founder and CEO of Bazooka Tango. He's teamed up with Immutable on a new game that's coming out called Shardbound. And Bo is a former engineer with Rockstar. Those are the guys who did Grand Theft Auto series and one of my favorite games of all time, Red Dead Redemption. Bo Daly, welcome, sir, to the Nifty Show.
Hey, thanks so much, Joel. It's great to be here.
I'm not blowing smoke when I say Red Dead was my favorite gaming experience that I've had, so much so that the story was so compelling. And usually, if you'll ask Riles, story is usually not my jam. I'm usually clicking through to get to the action. Is that right, Riles?
Can vouch. He's always just let me start shooting things and killing people.
Yeah.
That was exciting, man. Just we spent a lot of time working on the sort of Red Dead Revolver, which the sort of like turned out to be, I guess, the prequel. But like, we really wanted to make Grand Theft Horse, and we're excited to sort of get the opportunity to see that project come together.
Well, you succeeded. Why don't you go ahead and give us a little bit more of your background? How did you get into creating games? And, are you the coder guy, or are you a graphic engineer? Maybe tell us a little bit more about what
you do. Sure. I mean, so I've been in games for 20 something years at this point. First job out of school was at Rockstar. Actually, at the time, it was Angel Studios. It was kind of they had done recently come off of doing like the PlayStation launch title Smuggler's Run and Midnight Club. There are a couple of franchises there, and so Red Dead Revolver at the time was a Capcom project through Angel Studios, and that was during the period effectively where Rockstar bought them, and so we became Rockstar San Diego, and that was just an incredible place for a first kid out of school to be working on gameplay stuff, and so it was very lucky to work on that. Ended up finding my way from there into sort of engineering at an MMO company. This was John Romero of Quake, Doom and Quake fame. Had his own sort of MMO startup in the kind of early aughts, and got to work on that team, and that turned into a very weird, like, tangential thing where I ended up in business, corporate development, licensing, international sales across what then ended up being about 7 MMOs, and really got to see sort of like the birth of free to play, right? Like the initial kind of premise of the company was like everyone we're going to take on WoW and like really stick it to them, but the world changed, and it was a really great opportunity to see a new business model, a new paradigm, new ways of interacting with players, travel to Asia and see how very core games were embracing this new thing called microtransactions, and then to come back here to the West and see that start to happen in Facebook and like very casual games in like a very different way, but then kind of witness the journey that players had to go through to like understand MTX. And then, had that journey, left there to start a company called Super Evil Megacorp, where we built a game called Vainglory. That ended up being sort of, we launched Vainglory off the Apple Worldwide Developer Conference stage in 2014. And that turned into sort of like the world's premier mobile esport, at a time where like Candy Crush was how mobile games were. So, no stranger to like bringing core gamers through the portal in a sense, and really, kind of getting folks, engaging in deep core games in ways that they never really sort of anticipated. And so, when we recognized that there was an opportunity to build 1,000-hour core gamers games, and to really try to pioneer Web3 in a similar way to what we did with mobile, it was kind of a no-brainer for us. Like, there's a lot of blue ocean design space and a lot of fights to be picked around, can this work? Will it work? How does it make life better for gamers? And we're excited to be able to try to answer some of those questions.
So as an aside, Super Evil Megacorp was always my favorite name of all time for a development studio. But besides that, what potential did you see in Web3 that convinced you to make the jump and partner with Immutable on your latest project before we get into that?
I mean, part of it may just be a broken personality, and that maybe I'm just a little too contrarian. But whenever I see people say, "Hey, you can't do something great on XYZ platform," it really it gets me thinking, like, really, like, you can't do it, or you just haven't seen it before. And I think more often people's sort of reality is kind of circumscribed by what they're used to seeing, and that becomes kind of, to their mind, the realm of what's possible. And so, it's as an entrepreneur, as someone who is going to succeed by doing things that the bigger incumbent companies aren't going to take on. That's really tantalizing. But I think there are a couple like really obvious, I mean, the sort of like most obvious use cases. You know what? Like, gamers actually hate Web2 monetization too, right? Like, let's not forget that there's legislation being passed all over the world to rein in loot boxes and dark patterns, and in sort of what has become sort of like the main mobile monetization or free to play monetization model, and that's not particularly gamer friendly. So I think there's an opportunity here to really fix some of that by giving players the ability to control their own economy and sell things back if it doesn't work out for them, right? Like, we're building this first game that we're shipping again is Shardbound, and that's a CCG tactics game. So think Magic the Gathering meets Final Fantasy Tactics. A lot of deck building, a lot of experimentation, a lot of dialing in your own personality and encoding that in your deck, right? Which is, in a lot of ways sort of harkens back to great gaming experiences that we all had as teenagers sitting around the kitchen table on Friday night. But sort of that ability to like craft that deck deliberately into the style that you want to play, and to take that on the road, like, I think that's really powerful. But then when you realize that in Web2, if you did that and you didn't like a purple deck, like, it was meta, but it wasn't for you, you're kind of SOL, right? Where here, sell it back, get, maybe you spend $20 on it and you get 10 back, but that's a better experience for gamers. And I think gamers are definitely gonna get that. And then in the very long term, like, we want to build games that last forever, right? And so, this idea that when you write stuff to the blockchain, it's there, it's permanent, right? The databases are going to blink out of existence because games as a service is hard, right? And if the game doesn't end up being profitable, there's only a matter of time before that sunsets. And frankly, even games like WoW and League of Legends, someday those servers are going to turn off. And so, how do you build a future where maybe 30 years from now someone wants to play Shardbound again, and we've evolved the tech into a place where they can do that and spin up a server with a Shardbound token and have it make sense for everybody. So
only it's never a private server anymore, it's public, right? Because if you're pulling the data, I mean, I remember Riles and I played City of Heroes when it was the thing, and then one day it's gone, and now you have to go to a private server to play it.
And I've been on the other side of that like a couple of times, and it always sucks to have to sunset a game, right? But it's just a reality of the business. And if you can start to architect things in a better way, it may not be something that we're seeing this year or next year, but I do think that over the long term, DAOs are going to take over ownership of games that have kind of run their course, and there are going to be sort of more interesting ways to support that the player journey.
I'm going to say now that WoW will never be sunset. That somehow a transition will take place. That there's just too many people. Even now, I was looking at a video about who's got the most subscribers for an MMORPG, and WoW is still at the top.
Which is still one of the most played games in the world, like 20 something years on. And that's actually, I take a lot of definitely a lot of inspiration from WoW. I mean, I spent 10 years in MMOs, and I think we learned that it's foolish to try to build a game at that scale and to try to market it to everything. But they really were the first metaverse, right? It was, to some people, a fishing game or a crafting game, and to other people, a PvP battleground or a raiding or questing game. But that sort of social fabric that comes out of all those different people being economically interdependent is what created this 20-year plus franchise. And so in a way, what I hope that we see and that we're able to build off the back of Shardbound tactics, but then also 20 more years of development building special experiences that maybe connect in interesting ways that we've never seen before in Web2, that we can build something of the scale of WoW that has that sort of social connectivity and that stickiness to be a forever game.
I'd like to go into the choice of this hybrid model between a CCG and a as you say, tactics based game, because of course the CCG market is very saturated, and putting a twist on it with a tactics genre blend is certainly original. Historically, that blend has been pretty challenged. Like, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Duelist, which was released a few years ago, and that was shut down relatively quickly. So, what made you decide to go for this blend of genres and target this market niche? And how do you think Shardbound is going to come out with the longevity to live forever?
It's a great question. I mean, the fact that we all remember Duelist, I think, is actually kind of a counterpoint, right? Like, these, a lot of games just get forgotten.
Well, I want to cut you off right there, right? Because there was a very specific reason for why Duelist is so widely remembered. I would say it was the exceptional quality of pixel art and animation, right? That was one of a kind.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly had a distinctive look and feel, but there were other games of the era that were and whose names I can't bring to mind that kind of had a similar kind of look and feel. So I think it matters, certainly, and I think look and feel matters, and I think that Shardbound is playing in a space where it is beautiful, right? I mean, it is sort of WoW style in terms of being an IP that looks lived in, right? That looks looks like these cultures have been around for 1,000 years, and it's pretty interesting from that perspective. So I think that that's part of it, but ultimately it's got to come down to gameplay, and I think in a lot of ways it's got to come down to building a game that is more spectatable, more interesting to watch and to create content for, and to really sort of kind of carve out our own space, right? I definitely think that the sort of tactics angle, sets us apart a little bit, but it also, potentially opens us up to kind of a very different design space than your sort of like classic CCGs. And those are the things that we're kind of really most interested in exploring and sort of pushing the boundaries of now.
Well, let's go ahead and take a look at the teaser trailer. It's about a minute here for Shardbound and experience what it is you guys are creating.
So one of the things that I notice about the Shardbound site is that this is a Web3 game. It's NFT integrated, but there is no language on the entire homepage that would suggest that that is the case.
Is that a question?
That's
an observation.
It's an observation that's worth making.
It is, and in that observation, there's the question of how is this Web3 so that traditional gamers won't hate it. As Riles observed, not having NFT language on the page is a great start.
Yeah, I mean, I think the term, the sort of NFT term really kind of came into the vernacular, sort of meaning a very specific thing, right? And I think NFT is more associated with like avatar profile pics and things like that, and that's really not what this is about. This is about collecting units and owning them and doing interesting things with them, and hopefully having those continue to provide utility for a long time for players. So My general sense is like, I think we're at kind of a weird moment in history here where, because of, just in some ways, products that maybe weren't what they should be or weren't really aligned for gamers, that the technology has sort of taken on the stink of the past generation of products. And for us, it's not really about technology, it's about experience, right? It's about what are the things that gamers can do now that they never even really thought was possible, or that would be prohibitively difficult or expensive to build. I think the technology is, like, the product is best when the technology sort of recedes into the background. So I think the fact that we are relying on blockchain technology to power certain features of the game is an important technical distinction, but I don't know that it necessarily is like, I mean, it doesn't define what the game is, and it's so that technology choice is a choice in service of the game experience, and sort of what the player journey should be over over their lifetime of playing the game.
Now, while the player isn't sort of doesn't have all of that forced down their throat in the way that previous play to earn or NFT integrated games have done, while that may be the case, how do you intend to sort of mitigate or tackle the technological barrier to entry that comes with the need to own a wallet, to manage assets externally, and so on and so forth?
Yeah, I mean, this is where I'm super excited to be partnered with Immutable. They've got a lot of experience building in the space, and they have some products designed specifically to make that feel like a very seamless experience for players. So, our hope is that we get to a place pretty quickly where, even when players are interacting with things that are on the blockchain and sort of backed by NFTs and crypto technology, like that's still that's as seamless an experience as it can be. I think the challenges really are less about UX that you can build into the game, and at this moment in time, more about where platforms are and where they're going to be in terms of the hurdles that they want to put up, what's allowed to be integrated into the game, and how. And so we're looking very closely at how can we craft an experience that is seamless for players to get into on Steam or iOS down, and soon, right? And like be on the different platforms, even that those that might be a little bit strict, and still kind of create an on-ramp that will, eventually allow players to interact in cool and different ways, but really meet them where they are, right? Because again, to your point, like, not everyone's ready for that, from a player perspective. Not everyone's ready from a platform perspective. But I think if we look 2 years into the future, we're going to see a pretty different set of market dynamics, and we want to be skating to where the puck's going, so to speak.
So, what are the elements of ownership in Shardbound? Is it just the cards? Is it skins? Is there a currency? Like, what exactly will people be being able to say that is theirs, which they could then use, trade, or sell on a secondary marketplace?
Yeah, so it's the units. There's some talk about future features around cosmetic upgrades, other primitives that we might bring in. But I'd say really think of it as that deck that you're building is something that you have can have full control over in the Web3 sphere. And so if you're willing to sort of take your cards, upgrade them, progress them in such a way, and get in and take ownership of them as NFTs, then that opens up a different style of play, right? Which then becomes interesting, for high-end competitive play. It becomes interesting for sort of a lot of reasons that we can kind of communicate to players that isn't, line goes up, right? Because that's just not the conversation that I think anyone wants to have anymore.
So I have another sort of tangential question. Normally, I wouldn't go this deep, but you're demonstrating an exceptional level of expertise, even for guests on the show. So how do you intend to tackle anything that would typically govern the ability of a user to access the software? Because what's been standard in the past has been an end user license agreement, and basically all services are getting provided with the clause that service can be revoked in some sense. And typically that comes about as the need to respond to bad actors, or something adjacent to that. So what are your thoughts on that sort of issue?
Wow, it's a deep question. And a pretty broad one, right? So,
Yes.
I think definitely, there is and will be, even just to be on the stores, there has to be kind of a end user license agreement, privacy policy. We are not yet into the future where, our servers are like, you drop in a Bitcoin or some, or our own token, which doesn't even exist, right? Like, and can spin up your own servers. Like, that's not the problem that we're solving today. So, we will be constrained in some ways by, kind of the Web2 model, but, it's a journey of 1,000 steps, right? Beginning with the first one. And so, we think there are a lot of opportunities to decentralize and create more permanent structures. But, I think it's going to take some time for the technology to be there, the partnerships to be there. But, in a lot of ways, because we're building on the sort of immutable Polygon ZK EVM, this is a, sort of Ethereum based, VM compatible place to be building, which gives us a lot of possibilities in terms of interoperability and connectivity with other tools. So, we think that there are going to be lots of ways that we can kind of start to build towards a more permanent, more durable future for players. But we're not there yet.
I feel like it's definitely, a step in the right direction. I'm curious from your own personal opinion as we get ready to close out. Who are you admiring in the Web3 game space when you look and see what's being done out there? Who do you think's doing it right?
Oh man, I'm gonna get in trouble for not calling out like all of my like co-founder friends here. I mean,
I want to know how you really feel. What do you really like? This isn't a commercial.
No, for sure. But I think there are a lot of people tackling things in different ways, right? That I appreciate. So, I think for sort of like scope and scale of vision, I'm always, I think I think Illuvium is doing sort of a great job of, being open, building a community, having what looks to be a, pretty high quality project with clearly a lot of ambition, right? And I think that's the direction that we all kind of need to be pointed at. I think, in terms of sort of like big vision and interoperability, Petaverse is pretty interesting, right? Like, how do you think about interoperability across lots of different types of games, different genres, different everything? Like, I think that's super interesting.
I just hate the name. Petaverse. It just doesn't sound right. There's just there's got to be another way.
My friend Dennis at 5x5 Gaming is like just really focused on building, good quality, and trying to like reach, markets that maybe like don't have quite as big or established kind of gaming markets. So I think there's a lot of people doing taking slightly different perspectives on how you build to get there. But and at the center of it, like not to be too much of a shill, but like Immutable has been an incredible partner, and I think that the way that they think about building for the long term has been really refreshing to me, right? Because like I came in as a Web2 dev, like not sure that, like, I mean, my ambitions go way beyond Shardbound tactics, right? I want to be building for the 20-year horizon and bringing, 100 million core gamers into Web3. It's really not about like plussing Gods Unchained or like, whatever sort of like the current batches. So, that really requires a partner that's going to be patient, that's going to do the right things for, core gamers. And, the folks that we're working with at Immutable, they're like, veterans from Riot and, like people who see the world in the same way and, are, I think, a little bit less interested in sort of short-term profit taking and rent taking, which sort of dominated the first couple generations, and really focused on the long term. Like, what does this look like when you have, 100 million gamers, 200 million gamers coming into Web3, and what are the experiences and how are they different from, kind of the financialization that dominated sort of that first couple generations of Web3 games.
I'm sure, as Riles would say, we hope that people are playing and having a good time, right? Because that's right. The point of games.
That's the whole reason we're here.
Yeah.
No, that
Riles, I'll
that
leave.
answer gave me a lot of optimism for the future here.
You know what I'll say is that like no one gets into games to make money. Certainly not anyone of my age, right? Like if you're coming out of school and you got a computer science degree, like go into iBanking or something if you want to make a bunch of money, right? Like move to New York, do that thing. You're gonna have a better time of it. You get into games because it's a passion and you're a gamer and you want to create those kind of experiences for other people. And so, you know, now the unfortunate side effect is in order to do that, it requires money, right? You need to make money in order to be able to continue making games and to support servers and all that. And I think that over time, you know, I think again, what we're seeing here is a little bit of an anomaly where, you know, I think financial people started making games without understanding sort of what games were or who gamers were. And I think that's going to be corrected like really soon. Like we'll see, you know, in the next year or two, we'll see games come out that are games that just happen to be Web3 as opposed to like, financial tools.
Shardbound.com, the website, and you can go there now. Click secure your playable card. I guess if you put an email address in here, then you're going to get something special, your first playable NFT from the game. And Bo, we wish you the very best with it. Good luck.
Yeah, thanks so much. Pre-register, hit up the socials, join us on Discord. Looking forward to getting everyone's feedback as we go through beta and up to the live launch later this year.
Awesome. Hang out for just a bit, my friend. And Riles, this is the type of stuff that you I know that you breathe for, right?
Absolutely.
I love hearing optimism come from you.
Yeah, it's been hard. There's been a lot of reason to express cynicism, given the sort of universality of that financially oriented mindset that's been behind the development of quote unquote games on Web3 for so long. But no, you know, this is exactly what I want to see, exactly why I'm building my own games for this purpose. And I love hearing it from somebody on the inside in charge of another project.
Absolutely. We appreciate you guys watching and or listening. Would also appreciate your 5-star reviews. If you got a minute to go give us one of those. And until next time,
keep it nifty.
Looking into the future, what do we see? It's lined with digital collectibles, we call them NFTs. Games, trading cards, digital art, and those crypto kitties. Joel and Riles are the hosts, you'll know. Joel and Riles say this won't blow. They're locked and loaded, so ready, set, go! It's the nifty, really kinda spiffy. The Nifty Show.